Well, afternoon. In the 21st century, we have trust issues. So every year, Ipsos Mori post or publish the Veracity Index, which charts the level of public trust in various professions. They do this year on year, and actually the one that recently came out shows that most professions, they're all dropping a little bit, which is not ideal. But do you want to know the least trusted occupations? Do you feel nervous about that? Bottom of the list, those in advertising. Advertising execs, everyone knows they're lying to sell us stuff. Second bottom, politicians. Only 15% of the population trust politicians, not ideal. A little above them, estate agents on 21%. A little bit above them, journalists on 27%. But politicians, less trusted than estate agents. Oopla. Not that I can smile about it too much. 56% of the UK population trust clergy. That's down from 67% last year. Oops. And less than the average man of street or woman in the street. Average person in the street is trusted by 57%. So I'm less trustworthy than average. Not ideal. You won't be surprised. Top of the list, most trusted, nurses. They always are, have been for the last decade. Number 2, doctors. Number 3, museum curators. How does that even work? What have they even done for the last year? Nothing. I mean, the logic of that is do nothing, go on sabbatical for a year and people will trust you more. I don't really understand that. But you have to trust people. I mean, you have to trust people to a certain extent. We trust our banks not to steal our money. That's why we deposit there. We trust our friends not to betray our secrets. You have to trust people on some things. And eventually, you need to trust someone with your life. In that you need to have someone answer the question, what is a successful life? What happens when I die acutely? There are things you do need to trust. And so how do you make decisions about who's trustworthy? I was thinking about this. Perhaps you think of someone's history. What they've achieved. If you're interviewing someone for a job, what's your history? What have you done? What have been your achievements? You'd probably test their knowledge. How much do you know about developing this product, about selling this product, whatever it may be? You'd probably take out references, of course, character. So something like their history, their knowledge or values, their character. I guess it's similar if you were deciding whether to marry someone. You'd want to know a little bit about their history, where they've come from, family of origin, what they've done with their life. You'd certainly want to know their values, what matters to them, what do they think is important. You probably wouldn't take up references, you hopefully would have worked it out by now. Their character, who are their friends and how do they... Is that fair, do you think? It's a bit of history, a bit of knowledge, values, a bit of character. Those are the bases upon which we decide whether to trust someone or not. So I just briefly want to think about Jesus with those areas. Would you trust him? His history, his knowledge or values, his character? Briefly. What about his history? Let me read Luke chapter 1, verses 1 to 4, the beginning of Luke's gospel. Many have undertaken, writes Luke, many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, with this in mind. Since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things that you've been taught. Apparently 40% of the UK population don't realise that Jesus was actually a real historical figure who lived in the first century. But there is no controversy on that fact. You cannot find a historian, professional historian, on this planet who will deny the existence of Jesus in the first century. And Luke is one of the gospel writers, historians, who wrote a biography of the life of Jesus. And we just read his introduction. Now, it's interesting here. What does he think he's writing? He says he's writing an account, an orderly account is what he says he's writing. So he doesn't think he's making something up. It doesn't begin his account or his account of the life of Jesus a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. In other words, I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, or in the dream time before the world began. No, none of that. He says, I'm writing history for you. And he's going to write about events between 30 and 33 AD. And Luke mentions 54 cities, 32 regions, 9 islands, and you can check them all out. Of course, it's all true. When is he writing? He describes these as being events fulfilled amongst us. So he's writing contemporaneously with these events. He's consulted, he says, eyewitnesses. Now, you can't make stuff up at the time without people saying, hold on a minute, that's not true. All sorts of conspiracy theories, of course, do the rounds, all sorts of QAnon eccentricities and the like. But people say, that's not true, and write against it. Luke couldn't just make stuff up, because he's writing at the time. And it's just worth observing, even if we didn't have the Bible, we would know a vast amount about the life of Jesus just from secular sources, Roman and Jewish sources. So very, very briefly, what would we know from the non-Christian sources? There was a man, his name was Jesus. We know the time and place of his public ministry between 26 and 36 AD in Palestine. We know the name of his mother, Mary. We'd know something about his birth, that it was ambiguous. We'd know the name of one of his brothers, James. We'd know what he did, his fame as a teacher, a miracle worker. We'd know the fact that people called him Messiah, Christ. We'd know that he was crucified. We'd know the manner, the time of his death, around Passover time. We'd know that the Roman leadership and the Jewish leadership were involved in ensuring that he was dead. We'd know that there was an eclipse at the time of his death, the sky went dark. We'd know the reports of all of Jesus' followers, that he appeared to them on numerous occasions after his death. That we would know from the non-Christian sources. This is good history. And why is he writing? Luke says he writes this so that you can be certain. That's why he writes it. And that matters enormously because Christianity is Jesus. It focuses upon Jesus. Presumably, if the Buddha never existed, someone else could have discovered nirvana, as he claims to have done. If Muhammad never existed, presumably someone else could have said, ping, I've had a vision from Allah, as he was supposed to have done. But if Jesus never existed, there's nothing. He's a historical figure, and the events of his life are history. They're not debated. Apart from, did he rise again from the dead? That's the one you've got to work out. But you can trust his history. Secondly, briefly, you can trust Jesus' knowledge or values. I think everyone who actually does look at Jesus soon realizes, all right, yes, he is a figure of history. I get that. You can't argue with that. More commonly, people say, I just can't believe some of the things he says. He's a different culture. 2,000 years ago, people believed different things. Well, yeah, but so what? I mean, cultures change. Cultural fashions come and go. All of us would have looked at a photo of ourselves from 20, 30 years ago and thought, what was I wearing? Look at my hair. We all do that. Because fashions change and moral fashions change as well. The things where there is broadly consensus on in one generation look ridiculous 30 years later. There are plenty of things in 2021 that most people agree on that in a few decades' time will go, how extraordinary that that's what we thought. It's just time changes things. I've never read War and Peace, the Tolstoy tome. It's an ambition, possibly before I die. A friend of mine did that last summer. They said, yay, I read War and Peace. What else did you do this summer? Nothing, that's all I did. Well, you had plenty of time, it's COVID summer. But they said the thing that struck them was quite how different things were culturally. So 19th century Russia, killing someone in a duel, it's fine. It's fine, no problem with that. Hitting a member of your staff, it's fine. You know, who doesn't do that? But publicly lying, you're a social pariah. Of course, all those things have completely turned around. Caught publicly lying, how much money are we giving back to the EU? 350 million. You just laugh these things off. But dueling in the streets, the police are not so big on that. They don't like that. Hitting your staff, no, you'll end up in an employment tribunal. These things are just completely changed, just different. Or again, 19th century Russia, adultery, fine, no problem. I mean, probably far more acceptable than now. Having sex before marriage, terrible. Yeah, you just think, oh, those things have changed. Having sex before marriage, well, everyone does that now. Having adultery, still viewed as a bad thing, I think, in general. So just worth asking the question, in 30 years' time, what ideas will appear ridiculous to us? So please don't discount some of the things that Jesus teaches and say, well, I can't be a Christian because he teaches that. Well, in 30 years' time, everyone will agree that's a good thing. So just be slow. Actually, you read his teaching, and of course, as people have observed for decades and decades, it underpins Western civilization. It's very appealing. You could trust Jesus' history, you could trust his values. Third and last, trust Jesus' character. For myself, I think gullibly grew up thinking that Christianity was a fairy story and all just made up. Eventually, it was only as an adult I got round to reading one of the 4 accounts of the life of Jesus, Luke's Gospel. I read it and thought, wow, this man is compelling, really compelling. Go the extra mile, turn the other cheek, love your enemies, be a good Samaritan. This is compelling. And what struck me, I think, was the consistency of Jesus' life. Here's a person who, under pressure, lived out precisely the truths or the values or the character that he encouraged in others. A few years ago, I spent a short stint as a chaplain at Sandhurst Military Academy, where all the army officers get trained. And while I was there, the lecture that caused the biggest fuss by a mile was when a general came in and lectured the whole college, slightly unusual, normally done in their cohorts, but lectured the whole college. And it said this, I paraphrase, but when you're on the battlefield and the flak is flying, literally, the bullets are whizzing past you, what will keep you there? What will keep you looking after your men and stop you hiding? And all you young guys and women, you say, I'll do the right thing. But I've been on many battlefields and seen many officers hide. What stops you doing that? What are you rooted in that ensures that your character will be lived out? For myself, I'm rooted in Jesus Christ because I serve him. I will serve others. I know that's not true for most of you, but you've got to find something or you will be cowards and hide. This caused a little explosion amongst the 22-year-olds or ish of Sandhurst Military Academy at the time. And when I read the account of the life of Jesus, I thought, here's a man under extraordinary pressure at points. You can read it in Luke chapter 22 in particular, I think for me is the biggest moment of that. Just before he dies, he's praying and he's sweating blood, which the medics will tell you have to be under enormous stress to be sweating blood, because he knows what's about to happen. And his prayer is, in Luke chapter 22 and verse 42, Father, if you're willing, take this cup away from me. What was that? The cup, it's just a picture throughout the Bible of God's judgment. Jesus says, look, I'm about to die to take the sins of the world, your judgment against all injustice in the world, your judgment against all selfishness in the world, your judgment against every individual in this world. I'm about to die and take it all. It's overwhelming. And yet he does, because his character is magnificent. It's quite something that. He's about to take the sins of the world, punishment for the crimes, the unworthy thoughts of the world on himself. Those of you who've been parents will know sometimes when you have a small child, a baby or a little toddler, and they have a cold, and when they cough, their whole body sort of jumps in the cot because they're so small, and you think, oh, you poor thing, I wish I could take your cold for you. And you would, because as an adult, you get a cold, it's annoying, but you carry on, you sort of battle through, whereas for a little baby, it's sort of utterly debilitating. But no one takes every illness of the world into themselves. But it is here, spiritually speaking, as if Jesus says, I'm going to take every COVID, every cancer, every Ebola so that my organs collapse and bleed to death multiple times, every Alzheimer, every malaria, every HIV, I'm going to take all that into myself. Now, no one could do that. No one would do that. But Jesus is about to take all the sin, all the punishment against sin into himself. And he does it. He resolved to die for people like you and me, to pay for selfishness and sin. And that is a man of extraordinary character. So look, no one persuade you in 20 minutes, but can I persuade you to take Jesus seriously? If you look at his history, there's no doubt about it. If you look at his values, they're compelling. If you look at his character, it's stunning. It's consistent. And he makes enormous claims about how you need to follow him. So may I encourage you, in a culture where we really struggle to trust one another, here is one you can trust. I'm going to pray a little prayer. God and Father, we praise you for this man, Jesus, who was God. Help us understand more of what he was like so that we'd trust him. Amen.